Hey guys, what's up? It's me, Pagey, here once again with another video and introducing a new series to the channel, which I sort of had talked about previously, which is Arrowverse By the episode. And in this first episode, well, we're going to be going over the first episode in the Arrowverse, which is Arrow Season 1, Episode 1, otherwise entitled The Pilot. And throughout this series, we'll be going through each episode of the Arrowverse, revisiting it. You know, in some videos, we will, include 2 episodes just so we're not here for 20 years. Because I think that's pretty much how long it would take to go if you did 1 episode per week. So we might double up just to get through it in a decent fashion. But today I'm actually joined by, he's gotten the great honor, so he should count himself lucky. We are joined by DJ Airrick, Airrick's Reloaded, a fellow Arrowverse fan throughout the years. So I thought it was somewhat fitting. I can't think of anyone else that would be on the same level probably to bring on for the first episode of like going through the Arrowverse like this than Airrick. But the first thing I have to ask, Airrick, what's your experience of the Arrowverse through its years? Were you a fan at the beginning, or were you someone that jumped into Arrow maybe when the Flash came around, or were you there from day one, everything like that? Because for me, not to flex, I was there day one, Arrow. I think it was like October 10th or 9th or something, 2012. Saw the trailer at Comic-Con the year before, or the year earlier in the year. So I was very much looking forward to it. But where did you fall into it? When did you get injected by the Arrowverse bug?
I mean, to be fair, you were a Green Arrow fan, right? I mean, you were a huge fan of Green Arrow.
Well, I was a Smallville fan. I watched Smallville.
But you also said you loved Green Arrow, though.
Well, so, yeah, favorite, yeah.
So, I mean, like, I understand probably why you were like really into it. I didn't get into Arrow until the whole season was on Netflix. And that's the reason why I never reviewed the first season, because I wasn't watching it week to week when it came out. I remember watching it on Netflix and being aware of the Flash show, which is why I went and watched Arrow, because I had heard there was going to be a Flash TV show. And I was like, oh, let me go watch this spinoff or whatever. And I actually really, really liked it. So I was like, oh, I'm surprised that I didn't watch this when it was on. And
so did you watch? So did you start watching Arrow when you heard the Flash was coming out, not when the Flash had started airing?
Yeah, because I didn't even know where I could watch it at back then. I wasn't sure what service it was on, or if it was going to be you could watch it as a rerun or whatever.
Yeah.
I didn't really know. So when it came to Netflix, it was just really easy to watch the whole thing.
Oh, okay, because I know a bunch of people went back and watched like the first 2-3 seasons of Arrow after watching Flash season 1 and wondering.
No, I watched Arrow before I watched Flash. I watched it before. I just knew that Flash was coming out. So.
Okay, well, you're not too much of a noob. You're like, I don't know, like a C-level noob. We'll say that.
Okay.
But anyway, Arrow Season 1, Episode 1 was directed by the well-known pilot, I think they'd call him a master director, of David Nutter, but it was written by pretty much the three of the 4 architects of the Arrowverse in Greg Berlanti, Mark Guggenheim, and Andrew Kreisberg. Now, of course, like Jeff Johns was involved in it, but he didn't write the thing. I think he was more involved with Flash in its early stages. But yeah, it did originally air on October 10th, 2012. I remember watching it when it first came out. I can tell you what, doesn't feel like it was almost 11 years ago.
No.
So I don't know if that makes me feel really old, or like I don't grasp time very well. I'm not too sure exactly what it was. But when it did premiere, this is the fun fact for the episode and for this video. So get ready, strap yourselves in for the fun fact. The Arrow series premiere brought in just over, and this seems weird looking back because of just network TV as a whole, but especially the CW, it brought in just over 4 million live viewers at the time, which was the CW's most watched telecast on anything at the time in 3 years. So I bet the current next star sitting there going, Jesus, bring that back. I don't know if they would want that, but that's probably what they're thinking.
It's hard to believe that there was ever a time when they were getting that many views on.
Yeah, well, I think Flash beat it. I think Flash got more. I think Flash might have been at 5 or something.
Yeah.
When we get to Flash season 1, episode 1, a fun fact will be brought out. But that's
okay.
That's
we'll have to save it. That's a teaser.
Yeah, so I'll have to write that down for myself to remember. So we are going to sort of break down the story, but not really. We're just going to go through some of the highlighted moments, I guess you could say, chronologically throughout the episode. So I'm not going to be going, then Oliver did this, then Thea did this. We watched the episode. That would have been really pedantic, and would have probably would have wanted to be trapped on an island for 5 years, just in some silence if we had to do that. So it's probably good that we're skipping over that. But the first thing I want to talk about is, I guess, the nostalgia that starts off when I watched it, because I've only watched just the first episode. I haven't gone and watched episode 2, 3. I'm doing literally by the episode, by the video. So when we start the episode and we're running through the forest and stuff, but there's none of that music.
Right.
which is in all the other episodes when
Yeah,
they do
yeah.
this stuff. And even when like he mentions my name is Oliver Queen, like the way that this pilot was structured and everything was much different to what you get. And I understand that's the same with most pilots, but I feel like with Arrow, this pilot compared to what I remember from the other parts of the show is different. I feel like there was a bit of a, though the tone stays the same, I feel like it shifts a bit. Do you agree with that?
Yeah. I mean, also visually it looked different. I don't know, and I know we're not going to get into it. We'll get to it when we get to it. But just overall, I think that both Arrow and other like earlier season Arrowverse shows had a more cinematic quality to them in the earlier seasons. I mean, there was a certain level of like, and it's weird because they were the older seasons, but in this episode particularly, like that opening shot with him, running through with the hood on and the hair and everything, and the the fire from the arrow and stuff, like all of that looked different than what I remember. It just seems like it was a much wider shots, and was it in Letterbox? I don't remember. I think it was in Letterbox if I remember correctly, that first episode.
I think in like bits of it were, but it was even just like the color grading and everything. Like
it reminded me of Superman and Lois, like the way Superman and Lois looks now, but in Arrow, which I don't think it was in later seasons. So
yeah, I agree with that. But I just felt like a flood of nostalgia watching just those opening bits and him getting rescued and everything like that. And I must say, this pilot does move pretty quickly. I thought it was a bit longer, but I guess this was a risky one for the CW, and I forget about that back then because this was meant to be a Smallville spin-off, and well, not exactly a Smallville spin-off. Like they were going to do a Green Arrow spin-off, and then they ditched that and did this with different people. But that was in the news. It was meant to be this Green Arrow Smallville spin-off, and then they scrapped that and they're going with this reboot of sorts. A lot of risk with that, going after a show that the universe has been going for 10 years.
Justin to Steven, which was another big thing. Like a lot of people love Justin. So when Steven was listed as the lead, I know a lot of people were kind of annoyed by that. So
but I may as well say it because my first thing was I wrote down Playboy Oliver because we don't really get too much of that. You get like him being Playboy Oliver in front of the cameras and stuff.
TMZ or whatever,
and even the bit on the boat and stuff like that. But you don't really revisit that too much, at least from memory.
Not in the first episode, I don't think so.
Like there's only like little bits of it, but I have to ask because of that, because you get like the varying like 1-to-1 with like the two Olivers that Steven's playing. Do you think Steven did a good job in the pilot, like in regards to like owning it and like
from what we saw? I mean, I guess like it's really weird because I know we're just talking about this one episode. So in this one episode, I don't think we got enough of that other version to really understand. I mean, we explore it later on, but it's, I think you get to see him as like, the Tarzan type character as he's on the island where he's been stranded there for 5 years. And then you get the flashbacks of him being the Playboy character. And then of course, wearing the typical fashion of 2012 and the
was he wearing a cravat? I feel like he was wearing a cravat. I'm not too sure though.
And the hairstyle was very much 2012, but it was just kind of funny because I don't know if Stephen Amell is more like Playboy Oliver Queen or if he's more like the Oliver Queen that we knew, from the beginning of our time.
Maybe it's somewhere in the middle.
Maybe in the middle, because I don't buy the Playboy character in this. Like I think he did okay, but it just was such a weird. Like the shot of him, obviously the stuff on the boat, but then the shot of him being the paparazzi tracking him down where he's like putting his hand in front of the camera.
Yeah.
I was like, it's just so reminiscent of like the high points of TMZ.
I think Steven suited more the present day when we come back.
Absolutely.
Like it felt a bit weird. I think it's because it was clearly a wig as well.
He wasn't cast to play Playboy Oliver.
That was just like, hey, it's like you have to do this because of story purposes, but you got to be this guy for like 99.8% of your screen time. So that's why we're casting you. But the Playboy Oliver thing I thought was pretty funny. But I must say I don't want to say we get there pretty quickly because there's a lot of different introductions, but it's very much setting up the world that we're in regards to you meet this character, then this character, we meet Moira again. But one thing I was wondering is like, when you watch this, were you like, I can't believe we got legends in this thing, or we got like the Flash fighting a giant gorilla, and in this literally like 3 years after this.
Right.
Like, that's what I was sitting there. Like, this doesn't, it sort of felt like Man of Steel, where Man of Steel just didn't feel like it was building that world. It was meant to be its own thing. Arrow sort of has that. The But then, of course, like I guess in season 2, they knew they were going to be exploring more, so I guess they broadened their horizons in regards to like the weird stuff in this universe. But it's very, very grounded. Like this pilot's really setting up a grounded world.
Like I felt the Bruce Wayne allegory a lot in this pilot? Like it just felt to me very much like they really, really wanted to make this Green Arrow like a Batman character.
Well, they never shied away from that. Like I remember when they like I think I don't know if it was Belanti or Kreisberg said it, but like I think it's actually on the commentary. I didn't watch this with the commentary, but I feel like flashing back to when I've watched this with the commentary like a while ago. I feel like he said that was the whole thing. Like they aimed to make this in the very style like Nolan. That's probably explains the shots, some of the color grading and stuff in this episode.
And I mean, it's almost like because he comes back when he gets rescued and he comes back and everybody's there, his family's there. He's got his sister, his best friend, his mom, his stepfather, and just this whole family dynamic. It's almost like Bruce Wayne, if his like pivotal moment wasn't the death of his parents, because this was instead of his parents going away, because he did lose his father obviously on the raft, but then he comes back to like a family dynamic, whereas Bruce Wayne didn't have anyone except for Alfred. But in this situation, it's like a Batman origin story without having to lose everyone.
His origin is played out over like probably the 5 seasons, the first 5 seasons.
You definitely don't get it in this first episode.
So. Yeah, it's like a step-by-step process rather than like this big, canon event. If
I would say we don't even get his origin story until we finish the flashbacks, which is like
because that's when the end of the flashbacks in season 5 meet up with this pilot episode. So that's like the perfect like connection there. But obviously the journey is going through those flashbacks while dealing with the present day as well, which is what we're doing at the moment. But speaking of that, in regards to that journey, I have to ask, in rewatch, because I don't know when the last time it was that you rewatched this episode.
Oh my gosh, it's been forever.
A while, same for me.
Like probably 3 or 4 years.
His first kill that we see on screen, I think, is arguably one of his more brutal ones. When he like in regards to like him knowing what he's doing and like he has a choice as to what he does, which is one of course he snaps the guy's neck because the guy sent his face.
By the way, great scene. The jumping up and running by the guns and everything and then swinging around. I was like, what a great scene.
Just that whole the bit like the meme where he does the parkour, where he does like the I don't even know what you'd call it. I'll put it on screen for everyone to watch, but it's like the bunny hop sort of thing. It's like a little pop, and then he sort of floats for a bit and then does a roll, which I'm pretty sure is Steven. I don't know how they would cut that if it's a stunt person.
I don't know either. And it kind of sets up the whole parkour thing of the show. Like we get it every year, but you see the beginning of it here in this pilot episode. So
I think we're used to Roy Harper doing the unnecessary flips or whatever it was in later seasons, but I guess there's I don't know if that parkour was unnecessary though, but for some reason I feel like it was Steven that did it. I don't know if it was a stunt double.
I'm actually shocked that they had the balls to go with a character that just kills like that, because looking back at this and this first episode, he's not a very likable character. In the first episode.
But I think that's maybe like the mystery, because like you see him when he's a playboy guy and you're like, okay, he's a bit of an F-boy if you want to put it, and he's gone to F-boy Island when he crashes.
Literally.
But it's like what's the journey? Because we see the comparison between this like careless sort of just like, entitled brat, if you want to put it, to how he comes back from the island and that whole journey there. So it makes you more curious to watch those flashbacks, but then also see how he goes about it in the present day as well. And that's what I think the pilot sets up really well, at least in regards to that curiosity factor.
Yeah. Well, I see why now, like looking back at it, people are reminiscent of the earlier days, because the fact that that he does kill, but you sort of, as the episode goes on, and I'm sure as you do this rewatch, you'll see more of it. But in the episode, you start to understand that he's got a conviction, and he obviously has this plan that he wants to follow through with, and he can't let anything get in his way. So he has to make the choice when he goes to snap the guy's neck. Like, I can't let anybody know who I am,
but then that creates a moral thing, because when he's the Green Arrow or the Hood, he's completely masked up. So they don't know who he is.
Right.
So then he's killing isn't really this like sticky position. He's like, well, I could just shoot him in the leg, or I could shoot him in the head. So that's when it becomes a bit of a much more moral issue.
But in this pilot episode, I think he sort of justifies why he's doing it.
Yeah, I think
though it's not a great thing. I mean, he's murdering people.
But I think that like the silver lining is that, hey, it's a bad guy.
Yeah.
It's not like he's killing some cop or something like that who's
Hmm.
just walked in at the wrong time or something. So yeah, we can give him a pass on that one. I think we can give him a pass on that one.
Here's your murder pass. Murder pass.
Murder pass. I don't know how many uses you can get.
Yeah, I don't know.
Definitely, I know definitely overspent on that murder pass credit.
Expires
card,
in a couple seasons, so use it up while you can.
Yeah. The next, I want to say one of the bigger moments in this episode, though it's not really treated like that big of an part of the episode, is the Diggle introduction.
Mm-hmm.
And he's in the episode, but he is introduced like halfway through. I think it's about halfway through that he finally rolls in his, I think it's a Bentley. Talk about a flex, but I think it's a Bentley. The old CW budget.
And Oliver doesn't need a babysitter. He's like, I don't need a babysitter.
Yeah. But I think their early introductions sort of are a good base for that relationship because you feel like you can understand where it built from. It wasn't like it was awkward. It was like, oh, it didn't work.
Right.
You could sort of build from that. But I think they introduced this character pretty well, but it's sort of crazy to think that he started off as the driver for Oliver and Diggle arguably becomes third biggest character ever in the Arrowverse.
Mm-hmm.
I want to say it's Oliver, Barry, and then Diggle.
Mm-hmm.
Sorry, Supergirl fans, but it's probably the case just because if you think about it, especially Diggle's journey, and I don't know who's in the how many episodes, but surely it has to be.
I mean,
Oliver.
He's outlasted Oliver. He was in the show. He was in shows after Arrow ended. Oliver.
Yeah, he did the round trip of the Arrowverse,
so,
whatever year that was, the tour to Diggle or whatever it was.
Yeah,
so
he's been on every show except for Stargirl.
Even been on Superman and Lois. So he's even got that. So like it's sort of crazy to see that introduction to the character, considering what he went on to be. I mean, he was that far away from being a Green Lantern.
We had that other like Batman moment where he's driving Oliver around, he just disappears in the car. It was pretty funny. He's like talking.
Was that in Batman Begins?
I think it was. Yeah.
I feel like it was. I have no idea. I just
remember it as
why.
being a Batman moment, but I don't remember specifically where it's from. I'm pretty sure you could probably find a clip and put it up if you wanted to. But when he disappears in the car and Diggle turns around, it's like it's absolutely hilarious. But I just thought it was funny because I did not like Diggle initially because I'm like, oh great, we're gonna have this person that's gonna be making.
I thought he was gonna be like the party
like a
pooper.
snitch or something. And he ends up not being that character, but I still think it's funny that first introduction you're kind of annoyed, and he looks so young. David Ramsey looks so young. I mean, Stephen Amell doesn't look that much younger. He is younger, but David Ramsey looks a lot younger in this pilot episode. So,
yeah, but he tends to sport a bit more of like a beard more and stuff like that. So maybe like grows out his hair a bit. So maybe that might be why. But yeah, I think just having that whole thing there, and it was like in regards to the change in the dynamic between the characters, I thought was pretty cool. But the one thing that this then leads into was the OG Arrow bunker, which I think is my favorite one, just because it was so like bare bones. And I was sort of surprised because going back to the Diggle thing, for some reason I thought Diggle found out about the bunker by the end of the episode.
Yeah,
that's not the case. So I don't know what episode it happens in when Diggle finds out. I just thought that was the case. I thought Diggle just found out pretty early, though Diggle would have his suspicions. Like Diggle's not. If you're constantly trying to keep your eye on someone, you're probably going to notice something shifty's going on. But I just, for some reason, thought that Diggle knew about that and he was involved in the bunker stuff. The whole sequence, like the montage and stuff when he's building the bunker, and we get some pretty iconic moments, including the salmon ladder.
Salmon ladder, yeah. I saw that and I was like, I remember, didn't Steven want that to be in the episode? Wasn't that something he fought for to be put in the episode? Was the salmon ladder?
Well, it's probably because he could do it. Right. I mean, if you could do it, you'd be like, hey, I can literally do the salmon ladder.
I remember when I was doing research years ago, I remember there was like a Comic-Con panel maybe where like Mark Guggenheim was talking about it with Steven there, and he was like, look at what he looks like. Why would you not put that, in the episode? Because I guess he looked really good doing it. But yeah, what a iconic thing randomly gets introduced in the first episode. And
it's probably one of the most like if someone's doing a salmon bar in real life, or salmon ladder, might I say, in real life, they'd probably reference Arrow potentially, or like, that thing's from Arrow or whatever it is. But I sort of thought it was weird that it was just lying in the bunker. It's just it was just there.
I have to say though, also it was kind of funny that I saw when Oliver was like lowering down the generator and stuff, with the chains and everything.
Yeah,
I'm like, how did people not know what something was going on there? Clearly somebody was delivering that stuff or something like that. But anyway, it's TV magic, I guess. But he managed to get it done and get the bunker built. And to me, seeing this bunker for the first time, it's one of those things where you don't realize how much it's going to mean later on, like what this is going to mean for the character. But you get to see like the table set up with all the monitors of random maps on them and stuff like that. And so I was like, oh, it's a bat cave. It's literally a bat cave, which I thought was kind of cool.
Bunker. I don't think they ever call it the Quiver, which was obviously something that a lot of people wanted to, like, they eventually call it the Quiver. I feel like they might have at the end in like Arrow season 8, but I don't know if that ever happened. Maybe it just might have been fans calling it the Quiver. But even we got the tennis ball thing, which I think is maybe the most iconic thing from it, just because I think they use it on posters and in the trailers and stuff, was him like shooting the tennis. And obviously it's referenced back like when, I think when Thea's training, I think when Mia's training, maybe when Roy's training, maybe when Diggle becomes Green Arrow, they
opens up the crate and pulls out that bow for the first time, and you get to see the first bow that he uses on the show. I thought that was a great shot too.
Which obviously ends up being, I think, the bow that he uses in the final season as well.
Yeah. So I think it's the one he uses when he comes back for the Flash as well, I think, right? Isn't that the same bow? Or is that
I think it is. It must be. I'm pretty sure it is, or at least some sort of version of it. But like, yeah, that whole bunker thing I think was really cool. When I saw him, like, I forgot that that's what happens when he. I just punched my mic. I forgot that that's what happens when he jumps out of Diggle's car as he goes to the bunker. And that whole thing was pretty cool. Even the bit where he does like the flip or something over the gate to get up. He goes, grabs onto it and does like some weird flip over it. It's just nostalgia. It's just really cool going back and watching this because
the lighting was like green in the bunker. I thought like it's perfect. He's like doing the green lighting and everything right away. So that was cool.
And speaking of the bat thing, he also does the thing where he like hangs up by his feet and he's like wriggling around like a bat. I wasn't too sure what that was meant to be.
I didn't notice that.
He's stretching his back out or something.
We're watching his workout routine here. This is the Arrow workout routine. Tell me what that is. I mean, I see everything else you're doing, but that one is like
what does that help with his Green Arrow fighting abilities? I can understand the salmon ladder. I can understand shooting the tennis balls, but what's the
maybe it's for parkour? Maybe it's parkour training.
I know some like weird calisthenics thing. I'm not too sure. Something along those lines. But
some person can tell us in the comments what it is.
But I think it was around this scene we get like the proper introduction to the Book of Names, which is such an important part, specifically the first season. Also, it comes back up in like season 5 and stuff like that. But it's pretty much like the equivalent of like the particle accelerator, if you want to put it, the Book of Names, and that's who Oliver goes after and everything like that. There is some interesting names, like Isabel Rochev is in that thing. Hannibal Bates, who's in the Flash season 1, is in that, and I feel like there's a couple of other ones, but Isabel Rochev obviously is in season 2, ends up being like working with Deathstroke and everything like that. So obviously, that wasn't foreshadowing.
Beatrice was in there. No, Beatrice was in there.
Beatrice, if Beatrice wasn't there, her appearance might have made sense in season 7 or something like that. But there was no Beatrice. But there's probably some more names in there. But it's in pencil and sort of faded out, so I couldn't read everything. But it would have been cool if there was some more foreshadowing there, like whatever. What was his name? Adrian Chase's dad's name was Simon. What was his name? Simon Says, whatever his name was. His dad.
You'll get there eventually. You're doing it week by week. We'll get to there eventually.
In 4 years, we'll get there. Yeah. So, but the Book of Names is really cool and just sort of allows like that everything to play for.
Looking back at it, I didn't realize that book was going to be so important. Like when you see it that first time,
I forgot about. I'm not going to lie, I forgot about it. So when he pulls it out, when he pulls it out, I'm like, oh shit. I forgot that even like literally it's like not just a part of the show, but a very important part of the show and sort of like Oliver's motivation. Like he's literally got a checklist to go through.
Right. Because of his father and what happened with his father. So makes sense. But that was another great introduction. Actually probably my favorite part of the episode was the Arrow bunker montage with all the training and the setup. I really enjoyed it.
Okay. Well, that leads into one of the cooler things, and it's not necessarily it plays in the scene, obviously, for me, but it's like when he's first going after Adam Hunt and giving him the warning about like, hey, you have to give this money, you have to buy this date or you will die, whatever it is. And you get that shot of him first on the car. It's like the full reveal of him in the suit. I think that's an awesome shot and one of my favorite hero reveals in anything. Just like that. Like, what's it with cars? Like, doesn't Spider-Man do that in Civil War? I think it's on a car or something.
Yeah, but like, flips over.
Like that. Batman Begins does, and he does. So it's very much copying Batman Begins again, but a bit of a change. I actually think it's cooler than Batman Begins when he rips him up and goes, I'm Batman. But like him with the bow and arrow, I think that's a cool shot. I think it's really, really cool. And one thing I didn't really like, but I understand it gets changed in season 2. Not a big fan of the grease paint around the eyes. It just
I
looked a bit
remember.
off.
Yeah, I saw that. I was like, okay, yeah.
Some people liked it, some people didn't. I didn't think it needed to be green either because I thought it was
By the
black.
way,
when
I
he
know
did
we
it.
keep saying this, but that's a callback to that's how they fixed the Batman mask. They wanted to make it so the eyes looked like they were completely.
Yeah, they gave him like the panda eyes and stuff like that, or
So
raccoon
that's
eyes,
why they
whichever
did
way they
it.
call it.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, but that first shot of him on the car, I think, is a mad shot. I think it's awesome. I think they use that in like posters.
Introduction
and
of
stuff
the
like
hood. The hood.
Yeah, I didn't really like that when they call him. I guess it's because he was literally stealing from the rich and giving to the poor. Like they literally do a Robin Hood thing with him, stealing from Adam Hunt and giving it to the people that he sort of messed over, or the poor. But I don't know. Did you ever really like the name the Hood?
No, I felt like it was too on the nose. It really felt like one of those things, like, you know how when you have newspapers that find like criminals or whatever, and they give them the bad code names, not the ones like, you know, Cisco gives over in the Flash, but the bad code names. I was like, why the Hood?
Yeah, because I think they don't give him. I think they start calling him the Arrow. I don't know if it's the end of this season. I'm not too sure. Yeah. But I understand it's sort of like in Flash when they called it like the Blur or whatever it was, or the Streak or whatever it was. And then eventually it gets called the Flash by Iris. So maybe they could have done something early in this season. Whenever it
what
what
did you think of the season 1 costume? Did you like the season 1 costume?
I like it because it feels like a proto suit, and like as I said before, I feel like the first handful of seasons, if not just the first 5 seasons, is his origin to becoming Green Arrow, because we get the origin of the flashbacks, which lead him to coming back, and then the build up there to where he is like officially like the hero of that city, because he goes through a lot of like trial and tribulation and stuff like that. But I like the suit for what it is. You know, it's like
the hood is so. I forgot how pointy it is on the costume. It's like super.
Yeah,
I don't know. The back of it was.
I mean, there's even the thing like, even in this episode, we don't even reach the island in the flashbacks.
No,
the final shot is him about to reach the island. He sees the island.
But we do get the name. We get Leanne Yu. They say that at the very beginning of it, so we know that. We also get the Deathstroke mask, which I thought was kind of cool.
Yes, that was a cool thing. That was a cool thing. That was definitely a cool thing as well.
Almost forgot.
Which obviously foreshadowing for this season, but also the next season. But who knows if they'll necessarily plan that far ahead. But here's an interesting thing that I wanted to get I'll give my opinion on it, but I'm very interested to see what you think of it. But Oliver and Laurel in this episode, because I thought they got on pretty well, though I do think Tommy and Laurel had better chemistry, at least in this specific episode. But obviously there's a lot of like angst between Oliver and Laurel for obvious reasons. But I feel like one thing I remembered clearly about Arrow, and I wish they hadn't done, is that I wish they had made Oliver and Laurel, you know, lovers before he went on the island.
Right.
I feel like it would have been better if like they maybe knew of each other, or at least Laurel knew Oliver because he was his playboy.
And she never she never told him that she cared about him or something like that. And
he like maybe they'd crossed paths and stuff, but I think you lose a lot of relationship building and stuff. And that was the only thing that it's not necessarily noticeable in this episode specifically, but it's just like it's in like the season to come afterwards that it would become more evident. But I wish that they maybe didn't know each other. But I guess it's, you know, because of that, they can have that backstory with Sarah went on the boat and everything like that, and it adds a bit more just drama out of the gate. And this is what it is. This show is a drama. So at the bare bones of it, it's a drama action sort of show. So I guess they have to have that. But in a side note, Katie Lotz wasn't playing Sarah in this episode. We obviously had a different actress.
Right. Who's the actress that plays?
I have no idea. I should have known that down. I know she's like, I think she's the lead actress on like one of those like Bold and the Beautiful or Young and the Restless. Like she's one. Like
I wonder why they changed.
Like
we'll have to dig that out somewhere. Why they changed and went with a different person.
I think she might have actually just been cast on that soap opera before they got to season 2, or maybe she just thought it was literally a guest gig and that was it. So they had no intention to go back. But obviously, it's not Katie Lotz. That'll be a revisit in season 2 when she eventually rolls around. Right. But I do wonder when they made this, they actually like Sarah was meant to be dead. Like there was no intention there for Sarah to come back, but they never show a body.
Right.
In this episode, so maybe that was meant to be a lingering mystery as to, or at
that's
least
a really good question.
Through.
I don't know. I guess when we get when you finally get to season 2, you can figure out if they.
Well, that's the thing when they don't show a body, don't make
that's what I've said about everything. So, the other thing I thought was quite interesting was watching Tommy sort of not want to tell Oliver, you know, initially what was going on, and sort of playing the game of like, you know, should I tell him? Should I not tell him? And then. We got to see Laurel. I was about to say Sarah. We got to see Laurel separately a lot in the episode, especially with her friends at the office, and sort of just building that world up. And yeah, I mean, I feel like it's a missed opportunity for us to not have seen the actual romance build between those two characters, which, newsflash, we know what happens with that. And there's another character introduced. But do you think in this first episode that the intention was to make Laurel the love interest for Oliver moving forward? Or
I think this episode, I think it sets it up. I think it's clearly like that's going to be the romantic foil for Oliver, and that attraction is going to be a constant throughout the season. But one thing this episode sets up, I think, pretty clearly, but we don't see play out, or at least they take a big pause from it, especially when we get to season 2. They're clearly setting Laurel up to be Black Canary in this episode.
Yeah.
With her fighting justice in her own way, and sometimes the legal system isn't enough. And she appreciates
I think they wanted to do the comic book romance with Green Arrow and Black Canary.
Even towards the end, when like they get the money starts falling from Adam Hunt to all the people that he's affected, and Laurel gets the call and she's like, "Hey, maybe you should just not tell anyone. Just hang on to that, whatever it was, like 500 grand or whatever, 5 million, I think it might have been actually, 50 grand. I don't know what it was, or some ridiculous amount of money.
Yeah.
But I think they were clearly setting up Laurel to head down that path at the very least, whenever that might have been. Obviously in season 1, they don't get that. Season 2, they don't get that. Eventually in season 3, but there was just some road bumps there. But I think they were clearly setting that up with Laurel in this episode. And she's in the episode a decent amount. Yeah, I think that was something that I definitely caught on to.
Yeah, I mean, I enjoyed it a lot. I personally saw that there was something there. But it kind of got lost, later on. But in this episode, the one we're talking about right now, it seemed like they did have a path forward, at least in my opinion, for the two characters.
Yeah. Well, that sort of goes into the next thing I wanted to say, and that was the Green Arrow versus Adam Hunt and his crew fight in the office thing, which I think really said, if the scene in the warehouse where he sort of like kills the guy initially, if that didn't set the standard, I think this set the standard for what was to come in regards to Arrow and its stunts and stuff like that. And I think James Bamford was the stunt coordinator from day one. I think he was,
okay,
or at least a stunt person involved.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised. I mean, this was I think looking back, because the year that came out and what we had on TV at that time, I don't think any show was doing the kind of stuff that this show was planning on doing on network television. They really, especially with Steven wanting to do a lot of his own like stunt work. But yeah, I mean, just the framing of the shots, how real everything looked. I mean, everything looked very, very, very real. And was this an 8 o'clock time slot when it came out? Was this 8 or 9?
I think it might have been 8. But I must say, one thing I did notice when I went to go watch it on iTunes, it's an MA15 plus rating.
Yeah.
Which I was like, hold on, was this ever MA15 plus? And I guess it must have been. They didn't just change it randomly when I went on.
Which is why I feel like it might have been a 9 o'clock. I mean, if they fit this at 8 o'clock, it would have been rough. I mean, because it was a very
there's a neck snap.
Yeah. I mean,
someone shoots their head, like shoots themselves in the head, like.
So, I mean, for me, looking back at it, it was, exactly. I think this would have been a tough sell at an 8 o'clock time slot, but I think it was very well done. And, part of the reason why I got so involved with it is, like I told you earlier, like bringing me into it, after seeing that The Flash was going to be a thing and then wanted to go back and watch the show, is I thought I was in for like this boring show. I'm like, I'm not going to be interested in this at all. It looks like
Guy with a bow and arrow, that won't be interesting. I've seen Robin Hood.
But immediately after that choreography and the fighting and stuff, I was like, okay, I'm totally on board with this.
And I think that's why they had to do it. I love Green Arrow in the comics, but I sort of understand. I see people complaining Arrow wasn't anything like Green Arrow. If it was, the show wouldn't have been as popular as it was. I think the show had to be like this and be a bit more grungy and a bit dirty and a bit more edgy. Well, not edgy, but like darker in tone and stuff like that.
I think the connecting of Green Arrow with like a Batman style series was the perfect way to make it work, which might be why they ultimately went in this direction instead of like a spinoff of Smallville.
Yeah. And I think that's, because I think if they did the Green Arrow in Smallville, it's also a Green Arrow that they've done all the origin stuff on that. So I think going this direction and this tone and style, I think was what caught people on, especially that time, 2012, like Nolan's thing that just ended. I think this came out like 3-4 months after Dark Knight Rises. So no wonder people caught on to it and snapped it up and went, man, this is awesome.
Yeah.
Kept going.
It felt like it was in that same world. Like if you told me that Green Arrow existed in the same world as the Batman movies, I'd be like, yeah, it makes sense to me. You know, it feels like it could be the same place. Whereas like the Green Arrow from Smallville, I don't think would have worked in this type of show. I don't think it would have held up well.
Oh no, especially with that leather suit that he wore, like that weird. Anyway,
but he didn't have sleeves. That was good. I always
well, you would have loved it then. But the one thing that I seeing the comparison between not even just like where we get into like season 5 and stuff like that, but where we meet in like the final season of Arrow and the emotion there is Quentin and Oliver.
Yeah,
Quentin hates him. He hates him.
Yeah,
and Oliver is an asshole to him as well because Oliver like. He's just like, he's like, oh, okay, whatever. It's like, hold on. I felt so bad for Quentin in that scene. I was like, you're being an asshole, Oliver.
Well, the other thing was when Quentin was there sort of questioning them about like all these people like coming out and looking for him after he just got back in town or all these things happening. Like they were being, especially Oliver was being a complete dick about it.
Yeah.
And I'm like, he's just there. He's a detective trying to do his job. You know what I mean? Like he's trying to protect you and your family. He has no idea that you have a bunker, that you're out there with a costume. He doesn't know any of these things, you know? And so, it's interesting seeing where they started at.
And just that bit when he goes, like, well, just that bit when he goes up to Oliver and just goes like, did you even try and save her? Because I guess he like, but to be honest, like Oliver had but also the thing is, and we don't know at the time that they were planning it, we obviously know Oliver's with Sarah in the season 2 flashbacks.
Yeah.
And she dies again. So I don't know necessarily what they were planning because that look that Oliver gives is one of like mystery where you're not exactly sure, but it's also like guilt at the same time. So I don't know necessarily what they were planning, and I would have been I
think it was brilliant because they didn't lock anything in, which is what I really loved about this pilot was there's so many things that are callbacks that they didn't lock in. They left it very much ambiguous. And from a writing standpoint, David Nutter, again, just always connected to these great pilots. Between the visuals and the script and the directing, just the mystery, which is what I loved in the earlier seasons of Arrowverse stuff anyway, including Flash and everything. The mystery is so layered in this pilot episode. It kind of grabs you, which is what you want the show to do initially.
Yeah. Even the bit when he like speaks Russian, he has the hosen.
Right. The
tattoos, the scars. It's just like, you know, there's countless stories attached to all these different things.
Oh, and Riza, she's there. She's like making food.
Raising the maid,
yeah. And he's like saying that, you know, the one thing he didn't have on the island was friends. And you get this idea that like, is he really a good guy? Or is he this, you know, asshole vigilante? And, you know, like.
Yeah. And I think that's just that question, like the different morals around it as well. Like, I think re-exploring the pilot, I didn't realize there was all those different layers to it in regards to what the pilot actually is on its own, but also what it sets up for not just the season going forward, but season 2, 3, 4, 5 until we reach the end of the flashbacks and us connecting all those dots. And obviously they wouldn't have had it all planned at that time, but the fact they left the door open there and didn't really box themselves in was the right way to go. And it just makes you want to keep watching and go, what does that lead to? What does that lead to? But speaking of the last thing we get in the flashbacks really properly, like in regards to like major moments, was the Robert Queen death, which I don't really have much because it's a pretty simple thing. I think it's like him shooting himself in the head was all in like the opening thing. Usually it's like in regards to he's like, my name is Oliver Queen. This is what happened. I got stuck on the island. One thing I had to do, and I'll show it on screen right now to everyone that's watching. When he shoots himself in the head, he's pointing it downwards. It would have blown a hole in the raft if it went through his head.
Yeah, that's a good point.
I just want to say that. And also, he lifted that he's. I know it's in a future episode. I don't know if it's in episode 2 or something like that, but his dead body is in the raft. At least the other guy goes overboard for shark chum or whatever it is. We got Robert Queen's probably like decaying body in the sun.
Right.
In that, it would have stunk. Just wanted to point that out. I know you were nice enough to kill yourself, Robert Queen, so Oliver could go on and potentially live, but aim the gun better, and 2, maybe sit over the side of the boat while doing
so your body will just fall out into the ocean. Yeah, why not?
Yeah, because that would not have smelt nice like after like at least just let alone a couple of days, but 1 day max. Like, come on. But speaking of that and just that situation they got into, I had forgotten, completely forgotten this, that Moira Queen organized the kidnapping.
Right.
There are bits in like there's like main things I remember from like this and like even like season 1, like Tommy's death and stuff. But I can and like Walter, stuff happens with Walter and stuff like that. I mean, I can't remember what specifically happens with him exactly.
I'll be honest, when I saw Walter for the first time again, I was like, oh, I forgot that he was a character on the show.
What about the line when Oliver goes like, I didn't realize you wanted to sleep with my mother?
Yeah.
no holding back. Which makes you wonder, is that the Playboy Oliver who would have said that, or is that post Island, or is that somewhere in the middle?
A little bit in the middle, maybe.
I thought that was funny.
Because maybe Playboy Oliver would have never said that, but now, like, Island.
He wouldn't. Maybe he wouldn't have cared. He would have been like,
Right.
oh, I don't care. But now he's got maybe more respect on his family, wanted to keep his family
Right.
together. But yeah, I was like a bit surprised when I saw that Moira was involved with the kidnapping and stuff like that. Caught me a bit off guard.
It's surprising, but I do remember, obviously, that it becomes a major storyline throughout the next, season or so of the show.
Yeah.
But yeah, great. I mean, I think everybody was also perfectly cast. I think Willow was great in this episode. Like, I forgot how Thea was
good of an actress she is. Yeah, and she's a really good actress. You forget about that because you just, Thea gets a bit, I don't want to say one-dimensional come later seasons, but it's not like she's a bit more serious while she's still a kid, but still dealing with, the trauma that she's been through with Oliver going and then all of a sudden reappearing after 5 years. So I think I agree with that. Even just Robert Quinn, he's only in the pilot for a bit, but there's still a lot there. And obviously I from memory remember him showing up in later parts in season 1 as well. So I'm sure we'll see more of him.
More flashbacks,
Okay, so we have a special segment that may or may not pop up in episodes, but this is called Guest Trivia. Cue some sort of trivia, like I don't know, is that some trivia thing? I'm going to ask Eric 3 questions from this episode about events from this episode. Hopefully he'll be able to answer it. If he gets 1, thumbs up, Eric. Good on you. Congratulations. 2, he passes the challenge. If he gets 3 out of 3, you have to go and subscribe to his channel. And leave hate comments. Like, that's pretty much, you have to do that. So we'll start off on an easy one. Question 1. And people watching, you can answer these as well. We'll have some time. There's some time to answer. So you can answer them as well and test your pilot episode of Arrow Trivia. So question 1. What mask is hung on Leanne New when Oliver is rescued?
Deathstroke.
Yeah, so I wrote these down before, so Eric already mentioned that, so I knew that was going to be... I would have been concerned if you got that wrong because you already mentioned it. So one down out of 1. Question 2. What famous show does Tommy Merlin mention which mirrors Oliver's 5-year journey on Leanne New? Think 2012 and what show mentioned.
I mean, was it Lost?
It was Lost. Eric, you're 2 out of 2 so far. And question number 3. What iconic song is playing at Oliver's return party when he arrives?
God, why am I forgetting this one? Is it Push?
Push? Oh, for the Max Push 20 song. No, this isn't Barbie. Oh, you almost got 3 out of 3. The answer was We Are the Champions by Queen.
Oh, okay.
There's actually a couple, I think.
Yeah.
Like a G6 is playing, I think. And then
there
it
was
goes
some other
to
dance music. That's why I was like, which one are we talking about? I don't know. But yeah, it makes
and
sense.
then Levels by Avicii starts playing as well afterwards. They spent a lot on the soundtrack just for that one party thing. Because I feel like We Are the Champions by Queen would have cost a lot of money to use, but I don't know. Maybe
a lot
I'm
more
wrong.
than the other ones.
Yeah, I feel like that would have been a lot. But so there, 2 out of 3. So you passed the challenge, Eric. Didn't get 3 out of 3, but there's always next time, whenever that is. So hold your head up high. So you should still be
maybe the
disappointed.
next premiere episode when you do Flash episode 1.
Maybe I'll do some harder ones. But I must say, we've got a couple of things left. But the first thing I want to say is, what was the one thing that surprised, I guess, generally in us the most once you finished the episode? And I'll mention mine first.
Okay.
And I might be an idiot, but I was surprised that 1, there was no Felicity. For some reason, I thought she was in the pilot episode. But the one that surprised me the most, no Malcolm Merlin.
Right.
I was 100% certain for some reason he was in this episode. Maybe I was thinking back to that first episode in the final season when him and Moira are married, is it? And for some reason I just thought he was in the first episode. I don't even know when he's going to show up because there's no like setting up of a villain outside of like Moira is a bit dodgy. So
And I mean
I
the
just
stuff
for
with
some reason
Adam
thought it
Hunt,
was,
but that was like a separate.
but that's just like a
thing.
part of his like sort
Yeah,
of
yeah.
retribution thing for his dad.
Mhm.
So I was sort of like, oh, I just was like, where the hell's Malcolm Merlin? For some reason, I thought he was going to be in there. And same with Felicity, but Felicity mustn't be showing up until like a few episodes if she's not in the first one. For some reason, I just thought she was in the first episode for some
Yeah,
reason.
that's a good point. I didn't think about that, but yeah, it makes sense.
Was there anything that
Um,
surprised you when you finished
I'll
them? Like,
be
oh,
honest. I mean, I don't remember, or I didn't remember how like good the chemistry was from a family relationship between Willa and Steven with Thea and Oliver. Like going back and watching those scenes, and you mentioned it a few minutes ago about how good at acting she was. I did not remember because we saw her so much later on as like Speedy and being involved with all that. Like the moments where they were just in, the family moments where she was just happy to have him back kind of shocked me at how good they were. And just the visuals. I think I mentioned that earlier is how good the episode looked. It just visually looked so much better than I remember the show looking. Maybe it was the color grading in it or some, I don't know, something in it looked more like unique to what we have
yeah.
now. A lot of the
Maybe
shows.
that's just a bit of a higher budget because it was a pilot or something. But
Yeah.
I just feel like I remember like it's just most of that early, like 1 and 2, seasons 1 and 2 are sort of being like that, especially when you get to the flashbacks because you lose a bit of a different filter there. But I will now ask you, I'll give mine, but what was your favorite moment of
Mine's easy.
the episode? Mine, I don't know if we're gonna have the same one. Mine was the rooftop stunt scene.
Oh, okay. No, that's
Following Oliver and Tommy getting kidnapped. Not specifically to like when he breaks out, but when he gets on the roof and does like the little boop, little bunny hop thing. And that's I thought that was just really well shot and I was just really cool and everything around that. That was my favorite sort of moment specifically.
Oh,
what was
really?
yours?
Mine was the bunker, like the introduction.
Oh,
of the
yeah,
bunker.
you mentioned that.
That
Yeah,
was my favorite moment. Yeah, I really
that was
loved
probably like
whole
top 3
montage,
for me. Yeah,
because it's so iconic, knowing where we go from there, but seeing him like put it all together by himself for the first time, and then the montage stuff, just memories, like memory berries, like everywhere or whatever.
Okay. But well, before I mention my one, do you have a least favorite moment?
Yeah, I do have.
Okay, well, I mentioned mine. Mine was how they did the flashbacks. Not the flashbacks themselves, but how they cut to them. Because I feel like it's different when we get into the actual proper show and further into seasons. But they did them as almost like trigger points, like PTSD, like bolts of lightning, or him having a nightmare, or someone getting punched or something like that.
The way they were like,
it was like
edited into the episode,
how they were triggered, the actual flashbacks. So it was like a lightning bolt, or him having a nightmare, or whatever it was. That's what I didn't, because it's different from what I remember. So I was like, it felt a bit jarring that would be the cause of the flashbacks, because I know when we get, especially from memory in the later seasons when they're still doing flashbacks, it's just more of a simple transition. They'll show a puddle and then they'll cut to the water in a flashback, or they'll show a glass or a bottle of beer or something, and then they'll go a flashback and we see a bottle of beer, and that's where they pan from. It's not necessarily a hate, it's just something I didn't really like.
Yeah. Well, I don't have anything that I hate in the episode, but I will say that the thing that I think wasn't really well done in the episode was Oliver and Tommy's relationship. I feel like they're supposed to be like best friends or whatever, and we do get some of that, but oftentimes in the episode it feels like Tommy is annoying Oliver, and maybe that's because Oliver is different, from when he left and when he came back. But they had the least amount of on-screen chemistry for me, the two of them. I know it gets better, but in this pilot, I think specifically they probably had the worst.
Do you think it's because of like it's a bit of like a jarring thing because Oliver's like very serious and Tommy's really like energetic and stuff like that,
and the fact that he was keeping the secret of Laurel, like he didn't want to reveal that right away. So maybe that had something to do with it. But yeah, in this first episode, I think that for me, they didn't gel as well as the rest of the characters. Maybe that was the intention. If that was the intention, then that's great. But for me, that was probably my least favorite part of the episode.
Yeah. But overall, I think it's probably a top 2 pilot in the Arrowverse from memory at the very least. But I think this pilot episode definitely sets up the show from memory in a very good way. And we're talking about all like the open doors with, but not necessarily revealing exactly what it is, but not boxing them in with all the mysteries with like the scars and what could happen in that 5 years on the island and everything like that. And they didn't do the typical thing you'd expect in a pilot, which is just blatantly show the villain or have like a evil message from the villain. They sort of even leave that.
We got a villain of the week. We got a villain of the week character, basically.
Yeah, and that's and I guess that's how they're going to go for a bit. But yeah, I think for overall for a pilot, it's pretty solid. I don't know if I'd give it a rating. I'll pass it on to you. What would you give out of 10 if you had to give it a rating?
Probably a solid 9 out of 10. I think it was almost
Okay.
perfect. I think there's a couple things that get better over time, but just going into it, like with pilot episodes of any show, I don't like to give them a perfect score because even if they are great, I think there's always room to build on it. But I
Yeah.
think from the perspective of an episode of TV, I would say for me, it's easily a 9 out of 10.
Okay. No, I'm not going to disagree with that at all. I'll just go along with that and go on the flow. But thanks for watching, guys. Hopefully you enjoyed it. If you did, it'd be awesome to drop a like and show support. Let me know in the comment section down below your opinions on the pilot episode of Arrow. You can sort of give your favorite and least favorite moments and just anything that surprised you and any major issues you might have. Let me know in the comments. Of course, if you haven't been to Errick's channel, the link to his channel will be in the description down below. You can go check it out. If you want to get the longer version of this, you can become a member on the channel. Not sure how much longer it would be, but it'll be some sort of longer because this is a long ass video. But yeah, thanks for watching. If you're new to the channel, make sure to subscribe and I'll catch you guys later. Goodbye.